Hey, this is Carrie Cassidy, Project Camelot, Whistleblower Radio, and we are talking to Bob Dean, Command Sergeant Major Robert O. Dean. Bob, are you with us?
I'm still here, Carrie.
Wonderful. And you know what? I have asked, especially just for me, for them to keep you on the earth for a good deal longer. I guess you're going to be very mad at me for that.
Listen, honey, when I came in, I'm one of those guys who believes that everything that happens for a reason. I think my arrival on this planet was programmed. I believe that my departure is programmed. And I believe that whatever day that my ticket says I ticket out, I will leave. And apparently, I'm not about to leave anytime soon.
I know. You're just, you know, like the Energizer Bunny. You just keep on going.
Well, let me tell you something honestly here. One of the things that keeps me here, and one of the things that keeps me alive and vigorous, are people like you. Terry, you're one of the first who really began to show and pay attention to what I had to say and what I've learned and what I've experienced. And every time I get invited to speak at a conference, it's like a shot in the arm. I really do believe that. I was honored, deeply honored, to be invited to Barcelona last year. Then I went off to Madrid, and then I had an invitation to Mexico City last March. And then this last month, in October, I spoke at a conference at the Bay Area Conference in San Jose. And now I've been invited to speak at the 20th anniversary conference of the World UFO Conference that Wendell and I initiated 20 years ago. And I'm going to be speaking at that conference here in Phoenix this coming February.
Oh, fabulous. Well, congratulations. That's lovely. Yes. Maybe I'll see you there then, because it's pretty close to California. I might drop in.
Well, you better show up. I'd like to take you out to dinner.
That would be delightful, I have to say.
I've said this to you before. You're like family to me. As you may know, I think I've shared this with you. I lost a daughter, a precious, beautiful, wonderful person. I lost a daughter to suicide many years ago.
Incredible.
And I kind of look upon you as family, and I was honored when you first invited me for an interview, and I was also quite surprised and very gratified at the response we've gotten. As I jokingly told you, you turned me into a damn celebrity, and
that's right.
Those Camelot interviews, I was shocked, Carrie, at the effect and the impact they had all around the world.
Oh yeah, and it's still happening. We get emails all the time. People just really go crazy over your with the interviews with you. I believe
those interviews, honey, were fun. I enjoyed them, and as I said, you're a very bright young lady, and you have a knack of asking some pretty damn good questions.
Thank you very much. Well, I am going to continue to do that because I know you've got more information, and I want to hear it, and I think the world needs to hear it, and so I think you need some coaxing every now and then. We're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back. Okay, this is Carrie Cassidy, Project Camelot, Whistleblower Radio, and we are on the air with Bob Dean, and we're having a lovely conversation and touching on some very interesting areas. Bob, what I'd like to do at this point is ask you, in terms of the current political situation on the planet, where do you think we're at? Do you think that we are close to a war-type situation?
Well, that's a pretty blunt question, young lady. I'll tell you what I've learned firsthand, that there are intelligences out there that are dedicated to preserving life on this planet. They look upon planet Earth as probably the ripest and most richest garden in this sector of the galaxy. This planet Earth is a zoological garden of unprecedented, unbelievable variety. And there are intelligences out there, Carrie, that are dedicated to keeping this planet well and alive. And they're dedicated to keeping the survival of all the flora and the fauna on this planet. And the human race is part of the fauna. And I told you this before at an interview, I think, is that I do not believe there will be a nuclear war on this planet because the custodians are not about to allow that to happen. This planet is precious to them. And they have apparently they have a responsibility, a galactic responsibility, to keep this planet alive and well. And I do not believe there's going to be a nuclear war. Now, those of us living in the monkey cage, as I jokingly refer to it, are, we're troublesome. We're the most difficult fauna on the planet. And we've learned enough and we've progressed enough that we have become dangerous. The human species itself, Carrie, is dangerous. But they're surviving, or they're surveying us, they're monitoring us very closely. And that I do not believe that they will allow a nuclear exchange. Now, war is going to continue because it seems to be one of the human beings' most popular pastimes, for God's sake.
I agree with that. Well, I want to know specifically about Korea, because having been over, you were stationed over in Korea for quite some time, so you would have a perspective on what's going on right now, right?
Well, I have a feeling about the Koreans. I got to know many of them fairly well, and I have a tremendous respect for the Korean people. And I'll tell you frankly, they need to be united. And I believe that eventually that the North and the South will eventually be reunited again. But that will happen, and it's going to take some time, and it's not going to happen next week. But I do believe eventually that the Koreans, the North and the South, will be reunited. I also am hopeful about what's going on in that cauldron in the Middle East. I told you last February that cauldron is a control area that those troublesome tribes in the Middle East, and I'm speaking of all of them, the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians, and they're all over the damn place over there. And they have been, how do I say this? It apparently appears to me that they have been created as a cauldron, as an experiment to see whether they can learn to live together. And it's been a very long and bloody history. But, Harry, I've been encouraged by my friends from out there that eventually it's going to be resolved. And eventually we're going to come to terms with ourselves. And that reason and common sense will eventually prevail. And I do believe that. I believe that in my heart because I've been told by good friends out there that this experiment, which we call humanity, is too precious to be allowed to destroy itself.
I understand. What about the notion of the bloodlines? When you're talking about the Middle East and the cauldron that's going on there, wouldn't you say it's all about bloodlines?
Well, that was an initial experiment by at least this one group, the ones you referred to as the Anunnaki. They created that whole mess originally. They created humanity as a slave race. And old Zechariah was right on in his research, and I admired him. I miss him terribly because he was one of the bright lights of human reason. And we were originally created, apparently, as a genetic experiment, and we were created as a slave race. Well, apparently, somewhere along the way, God knows when, an incredibly advanced intelligence from out there in the galaxy intervened. They intervened in a big way. And apparently they have told they've told the Anunnaki, if you will, to get their act together. And inasmuch as they created us for the wrong damned reason, that they're going to have to, they have a requirement, they have an obligation, and they're being monitored closely by this incredibly advanced spiritual intelligence out there to help us make it through this transition and to help us survive as a species. So I believe that's what happened in '54 at Borak Air Force Base. The Anunnaki met Ike, and apparently we have been being helped by them over the years in a number of different ways.
Okay, so you don't think it was the Greys that met Ike? You think it was the Anunnaki?
Well, apparently there was a mixed group there involved, Gary.
Oh, really?
The people who were present at the scene when it happened saw different races. There were some Greys involved, and there were some humanoids involved. And apparently there was another contact a year or so later at Holloman Air Force Base, where we had a face-to-face with another group. And apparently that was the Nordics.
Okay. One of these, my understanding is that one of these races, at least, offered us technology. That we took that deal. The other deal that we were offered was to be shepherded through this time, but they weren't going to give us the technology, and we turned them down. Isn't that right?
Well, that's the story I heard, honey. I don't know if that's too accurate, but it may have been that very story. Yes.
I see. Okay, Bob, we're getting a lot of people are emailing me questions, so they will not quit. You've got lots of listeners out there right now, and I have to be fair and ask you the questions they want to ask you.
Well, I'm ready.
Okay. One person is asking you, we've already answered one of their questions, which is what specific alien group you feel you've been in contact with through your lifetime, and then they want to know what kind of interactions are happening recently.
Interactions with me?
Yeah, with the ETs, between you and the ETs lately.
Well, Carrie, it's almost continuous. I spend most of my time, and I think I've shared this with you, I spend most of my time sleeping during the day, and I'm up most of the night. And most of my contacts, Carrie, take place between 3 and 4 in the morning.
Okay.
Are you there?
I certainly am. Okay, they take place between 3 and 4 in the morning.
Yeah. Well, it's a time when everybody else in this area is sound asleep, or they ought to be. And I'm up wide awake. I'm up most of the night now, and most of the contacts I've had usually take place, after 3, between 3 and 5.
And is it the Nordics that you described, they're the ones that you're usually interacting with, or is it a mixture?
Well, the ones that I generally meet with, honey, are very tall, very trim. Most of them are over 6 feet tall. And they vary in description. Some of them are fair, and some of them are just as human as we are. We've got a lot of hybrids in our midst, Gary. I've often wondered, people like Neil and people like myself, and there are hundreds of us. There may be thousands of us, for God's sake, that are genetically connected with them. And as I said, why did they select me when I was 2.5 years old to have an ongoing lifetime relationship with them? I've always felt I had extraterrestrial genes in my body. Carrie, I've often felt like I was a stranger here in a strange place on the planet. I've never really felt at home here.
Yes, and I have to agree with you on that. I certainly feel that way about myself. There's another question here that says, would people currently have what is called the top secret / sensitive compartmented information clearance level have knowledge of the ETs?
Oh, Carrie, getting into the people who are classified and have high security clearances, it's become a damn nightmare. You know, there are 300,000 people, for God's sake, in this country who have top secret clearance. That's the kind of nightmare we've created here in this national security state.
But,
as Wilson said...
Bob, isn't it necessary to go above top secret to get access to the ET question?
Oh, the last I heard, Carrie, you have to have 30 levels above top secret to be involved in the ET matter.
Okay. All right. There's a person here who wants to know, how do you join the secret space program?
How do you what?
Join the secret space program.
Oh, my. How do you get access to the space program?
Well, he wants to know how he joins. I guess he wants to work for the Black Project.
Well, honey, I don't know how to answer that question. The intelligence agencies in this country have become a power unto themselves. That's why I'm so troubled by what's been going on. We have what we call a shadow government. We have what we call a black government. And our space program is so highly classified that at the moment, I've been out of government work now. Well, I retired in 76 from the Army. I retired in 1993 from FEMA. And so I've lost a few connections over the years. So I really don't know, Carrie, what kind of advice to give anyone, how to get involved.
Okay. That's fair enough. I've got another question here that's asking about the horrible experimentation going on in underground bases and whether you feel that's hurting our future contact as a whole.
Well, the underground bases are a reality, Carrie. Good Lord, they're still going on. Underground development, underground construction, it's still going on. It's been going on now for over 60 years. When I was working with FEMA, I was a part of what they called the COG program, Continuity of Government. And I've been in a number of our underground facilities, and some of them are absolutely shocking. They're unbelievable in their extent. They're more vast and more sophisticated and technologically developed than most people would realize. But as I said, I have been out of the COG program for a time. I know that the underground construction is still going on. They find it very simple and very easy to, they've got these enormous underground boring machines that bore tunnels all over the damn country. We've got facilities underground, Carrie, that most people wouldn't even believe.
I understand. You know about Dulce, though, and the experimentation, the very sort of diabolical experimentation. In fact, I think chupacabras are actually an escaped experiment from one of those underground bases.
Carrie, we've got some advanced technology. We have human nitwits out there that have taken some of these experiments, and they got out of hand. They literally got away from them. I mean, they tried a few things and they experimented on a few things, and some of the experiments literally got away from them. This MK Ultra thing was one of the classic examples of an experiment that initially was devised for the proper reasons, but because of human nitwits, it got away from them, and they ended up with some products from their experiments that they didn't expect. And I suspect that some of the creatures that have been spotted here and there from time to time, perhaps chupacabras are one of them, is a result of an experiment that they really didn't plan on having developed that way.
Okay, I've got somebody asking here that if you worked for FEMA, you have knowledge of concentration camps that Bill Cooper talked about.
Terry, I knew Bill before he died. I liked the guy. I found him, you hoist a couple of beers with a guy, you get to know him a little bit. I liked Bill Cooper. Bill had a problem. He had an emotional problem. He had a temper that he could not control. And Bill's temper got away from him from time to time. And some of the things Bill said, I do not verify as truthful. But again, I miss the guy. He's been gone now for a few years. And I was saddened by the way he died because that was totally uncalled for. But some of the things he had to say were right on.
Okay, so there are, Jesse Ventura, I don't know if you're watching Conspiracy Theory, but he just did a show on the FEMA, the concentration camps that are around.
Carrie, let me tell you, those camps were not designed to be concentration camps. They were originally designed under the continuity of government to be displaced persons camps, to handle masses of people from American cities in the event of a thermonuclear war. And we needed a place to put the overflow from Los Angeles and Phoenix and all of the major American cities. And many of those FEMA camps were originally designed as facilities to accommodate and look after and take care of Americans from some of the larger cities.
Okay, we're going to break. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Terry Cassidy, Project Camelot Whistleblower Radio, and we are on the air with Bob Dean. And we are answering questions from the listeners. At this point, we've got a half hour to go, Bob, and if you don't mind, I'm going to keep going through these questions because there are a lot of people that would like to ask you questions.
I'm honored.
Absolutely. Okay, so in essence, you do acknowledge the secret FEMA camps exist, but you say that you didn't think that was their first intention. You think that that's the intention now?
Well, I don't know that it's the intention now, but I know that the camps exist. I've actually seen a couple of them. They were designed, many of them were placed in old retired military facilities, and they were originally designed to handle the overflow from American cities in the event of a nuclear war. But now, Carrie, there are people in government that there are people that I would not trust. I wouldn't turn my back on some of them. Yeah. There are people in our government that the American people have no one to blame but themselves, Carrie. We've got nitwits working in government that are not that swift. They're not that smart, and they're devious, and many of them are selfish, and many of them have no principles. They have no conscience. So there are people out there in government that are capable of doing all kinds of things. Look what happened to MK Ultra. It was originally designed with a proper intent, and it got away from them, and they abused the system, and then you ended up with, an expose of scandalous material. And that should never have happened. It should never have happened.
Well, and MK Ultra is going on to this day. It's still a person, as you know.
Terry, we've got people in government today that are conducting experiments that they're trying to genetically manipulate the human genome. They're trying to do what Anunnaki did 100,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And if I don't know what their intent is, other than the purpose initially, I believe, was to improve the human genome. You know, to eliminate disease, to upgrade the genetic profile of the average human being, to raise their intelligence, to make them more healthy. And I support that kind of research. But then you've got these nitwits in these laboratories that are going off half-cocked in their own agendas, and those are the people we've got to look after and monitor, for God's sake.
Right. Well, I don't know whether you acknowledge this, Bob, but in our view, there's a diabolical agenda in operation, and it has to do with, well, super soldiers for one thing. Creating a Superman is another, and also population elimination.
Well, Carrie, I have no inside information on that. And as I've learned over the years, I take a lot of the information, 2 cents worth, I'm not sure I agree with everything I hear. There are things I hear that I simply cannot accept.
Okay. All right, well, we'll leave it there. We have another question here. The ETs that you're dealing with, have they taken you to their planet, and if so, what did it look like?
Oh, my God. Oh, I was afraid you would ask that question. Carrie, I've been aboard their ships, and a number of years ago, they took me to what I appeared to think of was at least one of their home planets. And it was a shock to me. It made an imprint on me that I have never been able to actually recover from. I have seen what this world could become if we get our act together and start working together and start trying to do what we should be doing intellectually, spiritually, for the benefit of the entire human race. They have shown me what the future can be, Carrie, and it was so overwhelming. It was so shocking to me to see what an advanced civilization, what an advanced mentality and intellect is capable of doing. And it gave me hope. It gave me hope that eventually that is the route and the road that we will take here on planet Earth. It's the idea that perfection, or almost perfection, is possible if we can simply avoid trying to destroy ourselves. If we could only develop an awareness that we are one people, one species, one race, and good God, we're all the same, Carrie. Human beings are a rare and very special genome. One of the reasons our friends from out there are so interested in preserving us is that we are unique as a genome. We are a pattern that's filled with imprints from at least a dozen extraterrestrial species. And there is no other genome, apparently, in the galaxy quite like the human species. And that's why we're precious. And they've shown me what is possible. They've shown me what their world can be, or what their world is.
Okay, but can you give a description of what the planet looked like in, the more material way?
Well, from what I was seeing and what I was shown, gardens everywhere, schools and libraries everywhere, and a very limited and very, how do I say this? Apparently they have developed a system of limiting the growth of their species biologically. And they don't bring babies into their world unless there is a warm, loving place for them. and they don't bring babies into their world unless there is a beautiful life that's laid out for them. And that showed me that it's possible. It showed me that possibility exists for the human species. If we can evolve and grow and realize that we're all one people and that we are all related, for God's sake. That cauldron in the Middle East, Terry, all of those people over there are related with each other. They're all from the same damn family, for God's sake. And the idea that they're butchering each other and blowing each other up just breaks my heart.
Yes, I'm with you on that. I have a follow-up question from someone here that's asking if the human concept of angels could be the same as ETs, and do you think that angels could possibly be what humans are actually interacting with? Some people that call them angels might be ETs.
Well, it's a hard line to divide here. Our ancestors, as you know, looked upon a lot of the extraterrestrials as gods. When we first encountered them in a major way, we deified them. And many of the so-called angels were not angels at all, but were advanced extraterrestrials. Now, I will tell you that I have encountered what I would call angelic beings. There are species out there, Carrie, that are so evolved, so advanced, that they literally are angelic. They're 99% spiritual in nature, and only 1% biological. And yes, we would look upon those creatures as angels. But look what the word means in the first place. The original meaning of the word angel was emissary, messenger. And our religions have screwed things up so badly over the centuries that half the ETs we ran into we considered to be angels, but there are indeed angelic beings out there, Carrie.
Yes, and I agree with you on that, and I've seen a few myself. Okay, I've got some more questions here. A person asking from Mexico about that there's a lot of alien things happening in the territory of Mexico that involve ET bases, secret U.S. bases, portals, etc., and an unknown pyramid, they're saying. Can you comment on that?
Oh, my God, that question would take an hour. There are extraterrestrial bases, Carrie, all over the planet. And I'm sure there are bases in Mexico. There are bases in the United States. We have a major extraterrestrial base underneath Mount Hayes in Alaska. And we have a major extraterrestrial base in Puerto Rico. And we have a major extraterrestrial facility on the Kwajalein Atoll in the Pacific. So there are ET bases everywhere on the planet. There's one underneath the middle of Australia. There's one underneath a mountain in the Pyrenees between France and Spain. Good Lord, there's even a major ET facility underground in Zimbabwe. But they're all over the place.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Okay. But as far as Mexico and actually South America, there's a tremendous amount of activity down there. Do you have any insight as to why that is?
Well, Mexico, Carrie, is another cauldron. I was in Mexico City just last March, and I've had a chance to talk to some of the more high-ranking Mexican federal police. And they've got themselves a problem in Mexico City, and they're not quite sure what to do with it. That city has grown so large that it's almost beyond control. This member of the Federales told me, he said, Dean, we've got a city here that when you look at the entire area all around that is considered to be part of Mexico City. He said, my God, we've got 29 million people here. The sewage problem, Gary, is getting out of control. The ability to provide fresh water for the people in Mexico City is almost beyond their control. And that is an example of a problem we're going to have to deal with all over the planet. When cities get so large that they are literally unable to be provided for and controlled, that I'm fearful about what may happen in Mexico. It may become a failed state, and that breaks my heart. Mexico itself may become a failed state, and okay. I don't know what we would do about that.
I hear you. Can you talk about the ET presence down there, because it's really very, very strong. And I'm going to throw something in here from Camelot just to get you going here. Our concept of what's going down there is that there's actually more abductions and more genetic manipulation happening to the genome, if you will, down there than practically anywhere, as far as I can tell. And I'm just wondering if you're aware of that and whether you've gotten any information about that.
Well, I know that that's a problem. It's a major problem. But that kind of experimentation, that kind of genome manipulation,
okay, we're going to break. We'll be right back. Okay, Jerry Cassidy, Project Camelot Whistleblower Radio, and we're talking to Bob Dean, and we've got about 10 minutes left, Bob, on the show tonight, and it's been a joy to have you on here, and I know that people are very excited to be able to ask you questions, and so I'm going to take these next 10 minutes to still go down this list of questions we got here. I've got somebody who's saying that his grandkids talk about aliens in a casual way because of cartoons and movies, he says. But he wants to know if ETs have any plans of their own for the Earth. Are they beholden to our governments? And if they are, why?
What was that again? Are they beholden to our government?
Yeah, that's what they're saying here. I guess.
No, they're not beholden to our government, Carrie. Let me say this about that. Sounding like Richard Nixon here. No, we are dealing, from the information I've received, we are dealing with 4 major groups. And each one has its own agenda. Now, I'll be frank and tell you that some of the extraterrestrials out there don't like us very much. An American scientist who worked alongside of one of them for some years said that before he retired, he asked this one extraterrestrial that he had been working with for several years, what do they really think of us, the human beings? And he said, well, since you've asked, he says, we generally look upon you as primitive, savage, and dangerous. But he says, we also look upon you as a species that deserves to survive. And apparently that is their overall agenda, to help the American, or not the American, but the human being, the human species, the human race. They want to assist us in making this transition we're going through, what I call a transcendent transformation into a new race. And that apparently is what is possible, and apparently is what our future holds for us. We are going to turn into a new species, and we are going to survive, Terry. They have encouraged us to believe that we're going to make it, but they are not beholden to our government. In a sense, our government is beholden to them. We're working closely with at least two of them and have been since '54. And we're going to make it, Carrie. And that's the one thing I want to leave with your listeners is that I'm very positive and very hopeful about the future of the human race.
That's absolutely lovely. Are you familiar with the TV show The Event?
Well, I saw a couple of the episodes. I wasn't terribly impressed. I think has it been pulled, or is it still on?
No, it's on vacation right now, but yes, it's still going on. In fact, one of the earmarks of that particular TV show is that the ETs look human, and so they walk among us, as you have said that there are ETs walking the halls of the Pentagon, to quote you. And the person here is asking, are they millionaires? Are they in high positions like the series The Event talks about?
Well, I can tell you flatly that I don't believe they're millionaires. Terry, they're not interested in money. They have power, and they have no interest in money as many of our human beings do. You look at poor old Bernie Madoff. Bless his heart. Here he is, and he's going to be locked up for the rest of his life. And here is a human being. And Bernie was not an ET, by the way. Bernie had over $1 billion, and he wanted more. Now, that kind of thinking, Carrie, that is totally, no pun intended, but that kind of thing with Madoff was alien to me. When you've got $1 billion and you want another $1 billion, that's a human weakness. The ETs, Carrie, have no need for money. They have power, so they don't need money. And yes, there are many of them in rather sensitive positions of our government, but they're not the ones we see on TV. Okay, and we're going to go really quickly here. I've got somebody asking how much longer before the euro and the dollar collapse and hyperinflation takes place. Would the ETs intervene in economic matters? Oh, boy. Well, let me tell you this. Eventually, and it'll be after I'm gone, there will be a world currency, Carrie. Eventually, there will be a one world government, and eventually there will be a one world dollar, if you will. But I won't live to see it. It'll happen after I'm gone. One of the things they've said over the years is, who do we talk to here on planet Earth? Who can we speak to that represents the people of planet Earth? And at the moment, there is no one that they can speak to. So what they try to do is they try to speak to people in positions of power all over the planet that they can speak to and work with and subtly assist in helping us make this transition. Okay, Bob. We only have a minute or two left here. One person is asking how can they meet ETs? Well, that's a good question. Actually, the music is starting up here. We really don't have time for you to answer that question. Parting words. They probably already have met ETs, Carrie, and not known it. That's absolutely true. Thank you so much, Bob Dean. It is such a pleasure to talk to you. Have a wonderful Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, if I don't see you sooner than that. And bless you, okay? And Marcia as well.